Companions are one of the easiest ways to make your solo RPG feel more alive because they give your main character someone to travel with, talk to, argue with, protect, and get protected by when the dice go completely sideways. Even though solo RPGs are usually something that we do by ourselves, the stories we create do not have to be lonely, and one good companion can add dialogue and tension, support and drama, and even more unexpected story moments that help lead your threads forward. So today we're talking about companions and why I think they're one of the most important things and one of the best solo tools that you can add to your solo RPG toolkit. The Solo RPG Academy continues now. Let's break it down. Well, hi, hello, everybody. My name is Turk. Welcome back to the Grouch Couch. Around here, we do all different kinds of solo RPG things. But that's right, today we're continuing on with the Solo RPG Academy. That's right, there's a whole playlist of tips and tricks that can get you through in your solo RPG journey, because I'm learning and you're learning and we're having fun with solo RPGs together by ourselves, sharing our knowledge. The goal is to cover everything from A to Z when it comes to solo RPGs, and I hope to put together a solo RPG playbook. Title's a work in progress. We're working towards making a real book. So, all your support right here means the world. Thank you so much. Speaking of support, big shout out to the Couch Crew. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. I really do appreciate you. And yes, I have some NPC examples in today's video that we're going to be using, and I did use a Patreon member's name for this NPC. Oh. If you want to get other weird kinds of perks like that, link in description. Now, at the end of today's video, I will have some recommendations for some books and other kinds of things that will help you when it comes to companions and solo RPGs. Just some of my off-the-top recommendations. There will be links to all those in the description. If they go to DriveThruRPG, they will help support the show as well. Now, without any other further jibber jabber, I say we continue on with the show. Let's do it. Before we get into section 1, I want to talk a little bit why I think this is so important and why I think this is such an important subject that we need to talk about, and just there's things that we need to cover about companions. And as I go back through my solo plays and figure out what works and what isn't working, and I'm studying and taking notes, there's a lot of things that I've realized. If you've watched any of my past videos, you know how important I think companions are. Even in the video where the things that get me most excited for solo RPGs, companions is on that list. But in all of my past actual play campaigns, there's currently like 6 of them running on the channel. Each one of my characters has some kind of a companion. My character, Willie the Wizard, started with a companion in the shape of a talking magical item. That's still a companion. We'll cover more of that later. He has a staff that he has named Charles. Charles has a couple little backstory notes. He's basically an evil demon trapped inside of a skull who's giving Willie advice or bad advice as we travel. And it gives Willie someone to bounce back off of. That is a companion, right? That is helping him a little bit. Secondly, Cassidy Cade in my sci-fi adventure has a robot she built named Failsafe. Failsafe helps her. Finny and Ash in my Legend in the Mist, my rustic fantasy campaign. He has a dog named Patch that helps him and sniffs things out. And Patch gives him something to protect, something to keep him grounded. In my whimsical fantasy campaigns, Fizzy Wiz, we just did Land of Eam. Fizzy Wiz, Zukenku, and his companion is a robot as well, kind of like a clockwork little robot, like a Warforged, if you will, by the name of Z1GG. And Z1GG is a popular fan favorite amongst Couch Crew, I think, but he's wonderful because he serves as a guide and he has information that he can feed to Fizz. And it's kind of like a way for me to metagame as a solo player to learn things from source books and pretend that Z1GG is feeding me that information. And when I play my campaigns, I always find myself picking up extra characters. Even Willie the Wizard picked up an extra character who is a bard, and he's searching for his lost loved one. And that became a story thread that he's now traveling with this bard, trying to find his wife, figure out where she is, because she's been kidnapped, right? Now it's a whole extra story thread, just because I really liked the bard character, and we actually met him in the first episode, and I just took him right away, right? Because I think companions are so important. They really give weight to the world that you're in. So you don't always have to start with a companion. You might find some along the way. My point in this is companions can serve for so many different reasons, but they're always so good to have. And we're going to cover a lot of that in this here video. But if you want some examples for companions, you can check out any one of my solo actual play campaigns. All of them have companions for one reason or one way or another. Cool, let's continue. Section 1, what is a companion or a hireling? What, Turkey? You're gonna tell us exactly what it is? Look, we don't gotta go into way detail, okay? This isn't Wikipedia, right? But there is some things I do think we need to cover a little bit, because this can mean a lot of different things whenever, depending on the game that you are playing. The kind of story that you're telling and how much mechanical weight that you want this companion-esque character to have at your table in your story. So we don't need to go into crazy detail, but a companion is basically any character, creature, or even an NPC who travels with your main character and then becomes a part of your story in a meaningful way. So this could be anything from a loyal dog to a weird little goblin guide, a hired mercenary, a robot sidekick, to even a talking sword. And eventually these characters can evolve to be full-on party members with their own goals and problems. You could even start with a second party member. If you do have more than one party member in your party, if you do, I'm gonna make 4 characters for my solo RPG. Some people do that. I think that's awesome. But my goal or my suggestion is every session pick one character to be your main, and then the other ones will be considered as companions. They're still main companions, main party members, but you're gonna always have one main character whenever you're playing, all right? We'll cover more about that later. But a little bit more detail of each different kind of section here. A hireling is someone that you hire to do small little tasks, right? Someone that you're giving gold to, like a torchbearer, a healer, a guide, just some poor random person who agreed to enter the haunted ruins because your character offered to sing them a song and you passed your charisma check. Congratulations. Secondly is animal companions, and they might not talk, but I still think that animal companions can bring a lot to the game because an animal or a strange little creature, even maybe just, this could also be like a pixie maybe, who speaks a different language you don't understand. You know, you can get as wild as you want to, but they can still create comfort. They can help with travel, alert you to danger, or give your character something to care about outside of themselves, right? Nobody wants dog to die. Dog must always live. That's the rule. Okay, those are 2 specific things I wanted to point out, but in these solo games, all of these should be treated like full party members in a sense. Even if you just picked up the hireling for a little bit, and even if the animal companion or sidekick doesn't really do very much, they should still be a little bit complex enough that they are strong enough that they could almost be the main character of their own story if you flesh them out enough, all right? We'll talk about exactly what each companion is going to need to help you towards the end, so stay tuned for that. But the big thing to remember is that companions and hirelings are not just walking stat bonuses, right? Because they should not only exist to give you a +1 to a roll or to carry extra gear, even though they can absolutely help with those things when the fiction calls for it. The best companions are going to give your main character something or someone to react to, because they can ask questions, they can disagree with your plan, they can be afraid when your character wants to push forward, or get excited when your character finds something strange. Or they could be like a subtle reminder of what your character's actually here fighting for. And they don't have to be complicated right away. You don't need to have to do all this complicated stuff to make this companion just as compelling as your main character. But you can make a really useful companion just by giving them a name, one thing that they're good at, one thing that they want, and one thing that makes them difficult to travel with. And we'll talk about this list later. But for example, instead of just saying, my character is going to hire a guard, so I pay the gold and now I have a guard walking around with me. That's kind of lame, right? Instead, we could flesh out this guard a little bit. So you could say, I hired Jesse, the old sellsword, who is good with a spear and wants enough coin to leave town and does not trust magic. And now that character immediately gives you way more to work with at the table. And that was one from each of those things that I just talked about. So we do have someone who could help us in a fight, which is important, like the guard, right? But we also have someone who might question a wizard, refuse to enter a cursed tower. Maybe they might recognize an old enemy, ask for more pay if you push them to do something, or slowly become loyal to you over time because of what you and your character survive with together. And maybe you guys both have similar goals to make some coin and leave town. And this is what makes solo RPG companions so useful in solo RPGs, because they're not just extra bodies in the party. They are extra story engines. And if you want to know what I mean by a story engine, check out the Building Characters video here in the Solo RPG Academy. We talk all about that. But companions are extra story engines that can create conversations and emotional moments and even new full directions for your campaign sometimes. And most of the time, companions are not even planned ahead of time. And those are the best kinds of companions, because they might come from an oracle roll or a random encounter, a rescued prisoner, or a town NPC that you liked too much to leave behind. So when we talk about companions in solo RPGs, we're talking about any character who travels with you, supports the story, creates new problems and or solutions, and makes everything feel a little bit less empty. Okay, section 2, my lord. It's time for section 2. Why companions make solo RPGs better. Why they make them feel better. In reality, they make them just better altogether, in my opinion, but to each their own, all right? So Now that we talked about what companions and hirelings actually are, and I'm going to keep saying companions and hirelings because a lot of people think hirelings, you know what I mean? Like in Skyrim, you could hire Sven, the archer, to come and follow you around, right? Or Lydia, right? A lot of people think about Lydia. A lot of people think Skyrim terms, right? So I'm going to keep in layman's companions and hirelings. Let's talk about why I think they're so useful, because this is a thing that sounds small at first, but it can completely change the feeling of your game once you start using it properly, using these companions. First of all, a companion is going to make your game feel a lot less lonely. Whenever you're one wizard sitting by a fire by yourself with no one to talk to, it can be kind of lame, right? And this is kind of obvious that they can make your solo games feel less lonely, but there's a big difference between playing by yourself and creating a story where your character is completely isolated from everyone around them. There are solo games that are meant for isolation kind of horror, but in a normal solo game where we're playing Land of Eam or Morkborg or whatever the heck it is, you want a companion. For a long time, I liked the idea of my character being this tough, lone adventurer. And one of my main first solo games was The Walking Dead. I created this lone guy who was going to go out and, save his brother. He was by himself. He was this lone wolf, but he quickly picked up a companion in like episode 3, I think. So while the idea of a lone wolf character can be kind of fun, I realized that all of my favorite stories have relationships at the center of them. Relationships are a big part of storytelling, and in a solo RPG, in RPGs in general, we're telling these stories, we're playing these stories, right? So the hero usually has a best friend, the warrior has a loyal dog, the wizard has an apprentice, the wanderer, and the strange little creature going through the woods. They're all good stories because these relationships can give the story a little bit of heartbeat. Because even if the adventure is about finding treasure and defeating monsters, the companion gives your main character someone to care about while all that crap is happening. Oh no, I want to make sure my best bud Bob doesn't pass away, you know what I mean? Now, we've already covered this a little bit, but the second reason is that it gives your main character someone to talk to. Dialogue, obviously, is hard when you're alone. When you have a companion, you can explain what they are thinking. They can argue with your character about what to do next. You can ask yes or no questions to see, how is my companion feeling about this? And you could roll yes or no, good or bad, right? But you could also celebrate victory together, which is cool. You could sit around a campfire and talk about what just happened and recap a little bit your story. Could be fun. And if you're not good at dialogue, it doesn't always have to be dialogue, but your companion can react to things that just happen. Maybe they're walking way in front of you, giving you the silent treatment. And that can say a lot about how the way your companion is feeling about what just happened, right? Maybe robbing that guy made them mad, And we'll talk a little bit about loyalty mechanics later in the video. But the third reason companions are useful is that they also create tension, like I just mentioned. Not every character should agree with your main character all the time. They can give them false information, lead them down wrong paths, and other kinds of fun stuff. Especially if you make a mistake and go the wrong direction in your game and realize maybe it was over here, maybe you can blame your companion for what just happened. Why did they do that? Now you have a separate story thread here. But to simplify it a little bit, maybe your character wants to take a dangerous shortcut because it's going to help you get somewhere quicker. But the guide that you hired, your hireling, refuses because they know what lives in them woods, right? Why are they refusing? Now you've got more story threads to build on. Maybe the hireling wants to leave after someone dies because they were hired to carry a pack or something, not fight a demon. You know what I mean? And I feel like moments like that make your story feel a little bit more alive because now it's not completely agreeable and every character gets what they want. It's also about how the people around them are reacting to your story. It grounds you a little bit. The next one is the thing that comes to everyone's mind, I think, immediately when they think about a hireling or a companion, and that's safety, because solo characters are usually in more danger than a full party is. And if your only character gets hurt or captured, knocked out, or goes down, and you don't have, the improv chops to come up with something that what might happen next, you know what I mean? Being imprisoned, getting out of prison, whatever it is, a companion gives you more options when things go badly because they might drag your character out of danger or create some kind of believable way for the adventure to continue without feeling like the story had to cheat for your character to stay alive. And obviously, when it comes to mechanics, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, giving advantages on stuff and helping out in certain ways. We'll talk about that more later. But story-wise, this is helpful in games whenever combat is dangerous, travel is harsh, because a lone character has to solve every problem by themselves. And a companion gives you a little bit more. I really feel like I don't need to go into too much detail about that because, duh. But speaking on that, a little bit of mechanic-y stuff, the fifth, and I think final reason, the companions are useful is because they can fill in the missing skills. that your main character is probably not good at, because main characters should not be good at everything. Main characters need problems worth solving. Check out the other video. Now, example, if your character is a warrior, they're going to need a healer. Bring them by, you know? They could also be a tracker, a spellcaster, whatever it is. They could also be an informational tool to give your character more information. Maybe your character is the brawn, they need some brains, or maybe vice versa, all right? And this does not mean that a companion character should be able to solve every problem that your character can't, but it does mean that they can open doors to different kinds of scenes and challenges that your main character might not be able to handle alone. It wasn't the last reason. The sixth reason is that companions are useful to help you create plot hooks, because every companion should bring questions with them. I've talked about questions in a separate video, creating characters. You should have open-ended questions. As a little bit of a refresher, questions can become the best part of your campaigns. You don't want answers to everything. You want questions that are worth answering. And your companion can have some really easy ones that might lead you down different paths. Why did your character agree to join? Why did the companion agree to join you? Who were they before they joined you? What do they want? What happens if they betray you, leave you, die, or become more important to the story than you had expected? And this is where companions become a little bit more than just support characters, because they have their own problems, goals, fears, and connections to the world that you're in. We're connecting us to this world. We're grounding ourselves a little bit. We're generating new adventures almost automatically. A hireling may have a debt to a crime boss, and that's why he's willing to work for you. An animal companion might belong to someone else way more powerful, and you gotta take them home. Speaking of animal companions, a fallen companion might be the reason that your main character swears revenge, changes complete direction, or finally understands something about themselves. But when it comes to questions, you can start simple, and you can kind of ask more questions as the story progresses. Does your companion hate this town? Why do they hate this town? Why did your companion know that song? Speaking of my bard character from my Willy the Wizard campaign, the dude understood a song that totally helped us out, totally got us through a whole section. It was absolutely insane. But those questions can become not only answers, but threads that can turn into entire sessions. Section 4, my lord. Section 4. I don't know why I like numbering things in these videos. I just do. Don't judge me for it. I don't care. Section 4 is about making companions feel like real characters, all right? Now that we've talked about all the other stuff, how do we put it into action? How do we make them feel like real characters? I will have a little bit of a summary section at the end, right, to help you kind of like write some things down maybe that might help you. But for now, we're just going to do a little bit of an overview of this, okay? Because we need to talk about the difference between useful characters and interesting characters, okay? Useful companions are obvious. A lot of us do this already. You know what I mean? They'll carry stuff for us. They'll help us in a fight, or, you know, give us a bonus on some kind of roll or something. But an interesting character has opinions and wants and fears, maybe even habits, and or relationships in this world that you are in, right? They might be related to someone else. They might lead you somewhere. And this is kind of fun because if you're taking your main character and dropping them into different worlds and different systems over time, you know what I mean? Whenever you go into a new world, even a new kingdom, you travel somewhere new, you might meet a new person who might have a connection to that world, right? And they might know the king of Schmoggenrog, and they might be able to take you to said king. They might be related to the butcher, and you really need to go to him to get some food or whatever it is, right? They have connections in this world, which is always kind of important. And you can just do this by, we've talked about it earlier, but questions, right? Are they related to someone in this town? Do they know someone, right? You can just ask those questions, right? And get them yes or no answers. Right, so if you give your character connections, they have fears and flaws and other kinds of stuff, and we do have a checklist for this, they're going to start feeling a little bit like one of the best parts of your solo RPG, right? They're going to start feeling like a real character. They're going to stop being some kind of a tool that you just drag around map to map, and someone that your character just has. The idea of a companion just standing T-posed, waiting for you to call on them is hilarious to me. And I feel like a lot of us do this by accident, just forget that we have the companions with us, right? And the idea of them just like standing there while you're like discussing some trade route thing with some big crime boss is just in the corner like waiting. So funny to me. Let's try to avoid doing that though, all right? So the easiest way to do this is to give your characters just a couple things, all right? I got 5. I got 5 things you can give your characters, or your NPCs, your companions, whenever you recruit them, your hirelings, right? They don't need full-on dang old character sheets with all lists of all kinds of stuff. That's going to slow your game down whenever you run into someone that you want to hire on the spot, someone that like you just rescued this prisoner from somewhere and you want them to join the party, right? If you have to do all this work, it's going to be a lot. So we're talking about 5 things. Unless you plan on making 4 full characters, the whole party to take with you in your solo game, you could absolutely do that. But this isn't the video for you. You should go check out the making solo characters video instead, because you're going to make 4 full-on characters, right? This is for hirelings and companions, right? Which could eventually turn into full-on characters, but on the spot when you're playing, you don't want to have to make that character sheet right now. Just see if you actually want to keep them, and then in a session or two, you can print them out a character sheet and start fleshing it out. But for now, 5 things. You need a name, you need something that they're good at, something they want, something they're afraid of, and maybe something that makes them hard to travel with, all right? Now, you could roll on a chart for a name or whatever, but something that they're good at could just be like their main class, right? Their type. What are they? If you have my Rules and Rolls Solo RPG Combat PDF, you can get for free on itch.io. Just search the Grouch Couch anywhere, you'll find it. The Grouch Couch, no spaces. It's free. It has a roll chart on there. Whenever you come up against an enemy, you can see what type of enemy they are. Are they a wizard, a fighter, you know what I mean? A long-ranged guy. We've got that roll chart. You could just use that roll chart and figure out what that NPC is good at, right? There's dozens of ways you can do this too. You can flip to a page in a book. You can put all the classes into a roll chart and just roll up a class. You know what I mean? Also, they don't need to have a specific class. They could just be like, well, they were lockpicking to get out of this thing, so maybe they're just really good at lockpicking, you know? They're a lockpicking warrior. I don't know. Anyways, no matter what, you're gonna need 3 things. I always do by the rule of 3s, and the last 2 are just kind of like extra if you want some extra spice, okay? Name, something they're good at, something they want. That's what you need no matter what. But also, something they're afraid of, and something that makes them traveling with is a little bit more complicated, can also carry a lot of weight in your games, all right? Because, let's do another example here. The companion is now not just the guard that you have hired, or the creature that you have just captured. They are someone with a reason to be here, and a reason that might cause you a little bit of problems. Problems are good, because problems are good for stories, worth solving, okay? For example, instead of, this new companion is good fighter, I bring them with me, they are fighter. You could say, my companion is Elizabeth, a quiet sellsword, who is really good with a sword, good in a fight. 3rd thing, they want to rescue their sister from the tower. 4th thing, their fear is being recognized in this town. And 5th thing, they refuse to talk about the previous war. Now we've got all 5 things. And that gives us so much more to play with, because now every town we go into might be a risk. Elizabeth might get recognized, right? Our character might know something when they run into another soldier, or if we stumble onto a battlefield or something, they might have some past memories. But another cool thing I like to think about is that a quiet moment around a fire during rest could be a moment to ask them some questions and learn some more about them. And you have these 5 things that maybe you can delve into a little bit more. And a fun thing I like to do a little bit is contradictions. And if you watch my solo games, you might notice this. But what do I mean by contradictions? Well, if my character is extremely brave, they might have an irrational fear of like mice or something. Or like if they're a big old buff soldier, they might be afraid of mice. And I like the idea of an elephant standing on a stool while a rat's running around and they're just super scared. That's classic comedy stuff to me. The contradictions are always good. Something you don't have to do, but it's easier for me to roleplay on characters when they have these contradictions. So it could be something simple like they're super funny and they love telling jokes, but there's one thing they refuse to never joke about, you know? Contradictions. Now, how else do we make these characters, these companions feel more like characters? They need to be reacting to the things that your main character is doing, all right? When a scene ends, our companions don't just reset to T-pose. They should had marks left on them. They should have scars from previous things that have happened, right? Companions need to evolve as much as your main character does. Even if you don't plan on keeping them for a long time, you might run into them later in the city and they still have that scar across their eye from that battle you got into together. You know what I mean? Companions also need to evolve. So remember, they need to react to the things that our character is doing. For example, our main character burns down a bandit camp. Our companion might be impressed by this, or horrified, or nervous. They might also sit completely silent for the rest of the night, because remember, the reactions do not have to be dialogue, right? The marks, they could be scars. They could be the companion now sits further away from you at night, or sits closer because they feel a little bit more safe and welcome around you. You know what I mean? Could be simple things like that. Now, if you watched the previous video about making characters, another thing that you can do is give your companions their own set of questions that are worth answering. And they could be super simple, you know, like, why did the companion agree to travel with me? Are they headed the same direction? Is there something over there that they want, you know? What could I do that would make them leave? You know what I mean? That could be another question that you could roll on later. What do they think of our character? Is something from their past going to show up at the worst possible time, right? Because they're connected to this world. And if we remember, these questions do not need to be answered immediately, okay? These are questions that turn into story threads, something we keep written down, maybe using as like a little pseudo roll chart. If we have something that comes up that's weird, we could say, is that related to this? And then if it is, then you roll on that roll chart and you get that answer to that question. You figure out which question it's related to. Here's the last thing I want to say about making these guys is a little bit of feeling like characters. They should have weight to them. They should have stuff to them, right? And doing those 5 things, I think, will help out, flesh out your companions, your quick companions so much better, right? You could treat treat them like full-on characters, but I think what's important is that your main character is still your main character. So you need to make sure that you find a balance so they don't overshadow your main character. This balance is really important because you want those companions to feel alive, but you do not want to spend the whole session managing whole character sheets, tracking a dozen personal quests, or arguing with yourself, technically, for 2 hours before the main character even opens a dungeon door, right? So at first, start simple. Give them a few strong details, let the story reveal more over time, and allow them to grow naturally through the things that happen at your table. Because it's good to have someone that your character has that is worth fighting for. Someone they want to fight beside, protect, trust, question, right? And someone that they fear losing. Oh. But that brings me to the next section. Section 5, yes. Cinco. We want to run our companions without slowing down our game. Right? Once we start adding in companions to our solo RPGs, the next big question is how do we actually run them without making the game feel slow, feel too crowded, or annoying to manage? Because the whole point is to make our games feel alive, not turn every scene into friggin' homework. This can become especially important if you're doing more than one companion, like you're running a whole pirate crew, like in my pirate campaign with Perry the Pirate. By the end of it, dude had a whole crew. It can be really easy to accidentally make too many moving parts. So, once again, my best advice is to keep your main character as the most detailed character at the table, then keep your companions much simpler, especially if you plan on running more than one. If you're doing one, I think you could do a whole character sheet for them. There are some fun other ways to do it too, we'll cover that later, but we could just be writing down those 5 things for each one of our characters. The way that I kind of like to do this too is you could have a companion inventory, which is a second sheet of paper or whatever you're using, and it'll have all your companions listed and then have little bullet points underneath them of the 5 things, right? 5 things. So you could have your 3 companions and each one of them will have their 5 things underneath, right? And then you could leave a little space for maybe like an inventory or like a special bonus they can give or something like that, right? You have like a companion inventory that your character has. So you only have 2 sheets instead of 6. You know what I mean? It's a fun little thing to do. And this could save you a lot of time because checking 4 different character sheets all the time and trying to remember, especially if you go into combat, my goodness. You could just look at the companion and just say, this character is good at fighting, staying calm, wants revenge, and will get violent. You know what I mean? The next bit of advice I can give is only roll for your companions whenever the outcome actually matters. Because like your companion opens a door, cool, don't roll for that. They keep watch, great, right? Instead of rolling for those little things, I like to let companions do normal companion things automatically, unless there is a risk of pressure or danger or some meaningful consequence on the line. And if we're playing solo RPGs, another good rule of thumb is to allow one companion to make 1 check per scene. Your main character can make a check, one companion can also make a check, right? They can also just make a check to boost your main character's action. But if a companion is good at tracking and you're following footprints through soil, cool, they're tracking the thing. But if the companion's good at tracking and we're tracking a strange monster during a storm while something is hunting you from the trees, that's probably worth a roll. There are some consequences that could be had there. So the game's going to keep moving without making companion rolls feel unimportant when they do happen, right? So if you're doing the companion character sheet thing, or however you're doing it with little cards, index cards could be great. I'd love the idea of that. But another useful trick is to let the companions just help your main character more often than not, right? So they do not replace the main character's checks in every single scene, but you're like, oh, I have a guy that's good at this, so he'll give me a +1 in this, right? Or I have a guy that might give me some advice. So it goes, well, I'm gonna get a +2 in this, right? One thing I've actually done before is I've had a D4 handy, right? And every time I'm like, okay, what kind of bonus are they gonna give me? And I'll roll that D4, right? So it can range from 1 to 4, extra bonus that I'll get. It's like they're just giving my main character the help action every time. And I think that that's fun. You also could do setup rolls where your companions will do something like distract the guards so you can sneak in somewhere, right? So they'll make a roll to distract and then you can get advantage on that roll moving in somewhere else, right? So they could do setup rolls in your scene. You have one companion distracting while you and your other companions are doing a thing. So kind of fun. And I know combat can get a little bit crazy when it comes to this, but we'll cover more on that in a second. Now, let's touch a little bit on if you plan on running a full party of 5 Pathfinder characters. Goodness, good luck to you, all right? My only little bit of advice that I do have, I think I said it at the top, a much easier way to run a full party is to still have one clear main character, and then you treat the rest of the group as important companions with strong roles and strong personalities. And every session, you can pick a different main character to have with you, because if you're doing it that way, you probably have 5 character sheets. But they all all do not need to get crazy amounts of screen time, and especially in like role play situations. You could just have that one character for that session. He's the one doing all the screen time stuff. You're developing out them that time, and all these other characters are just giving you those bonuses. I think additionally, instead of session by session, you could also rotate based on what is happening. Which character is good at what? Which story thread is important right now to which character? Could be fun to do. So like if we run into an ancient shrine, the companion who knows old legends might be the one leading that scene. If the group gets ambushed, the combat focused character might be the one leading the scene. I do not have a lot of experience in running full parties. I usually, personally, I just do one main character and then one or two companion. Unless I'm doing a full pirate crew, then I do the crew inventory, right? The companion inventory. Now, let's talk a little bit about combat. If you're going into a game with 5 full characters, I would expect your combat rounds to take a long time. You're going to have to manage all of your monsters, just like you would, I think, at a normal table, because you've got a normal table of characters. But I don't have a lot of experience doing a full party of 5 in a combat round, all right? When it comes to just using one character, when it comes to combat, usually your one character is just going to be doing mostly everything. And I like to give my 1 or 2 companion characters maybe little accent moves just to give my main character some bonuses, right? But all of my solo combats are leveled out to be solo encounters, all right, against one character. So it all kind of makes sense. But I like my companions to make checks sometimes, so they can still get damaged, they can still go down, right? They can still have some injuries happening to them. I kind of like judge it back and forth. If there's a situation where my companion character would have an advantage and be able to do something really cool, then I let them do it and I do a full action for them. And I just roll the dice and I give them appropriate bonuses. You could use that D4 thing a little bit too to see if they have a +1 to a +4 in a certain action if you don't have that written down. But usually if they're good at something, they're gonna I just give them advantage and I just do it. If they're bad at something, I just give them disadvantage. And that's usually how it goes with my stats. Whenever I first recruit NPCs anyway. Later on, usually after a session or two of me having these NPCs, these companions, I usually make full character sheets, at which point I'll know exactly what they're good at and what they're bad at, which is fun as well. But that's 1 or 2 character sheets. As a solo player, I don't ever do 5. If you do that, good on you, all right? And I know there are some solo games that do that specifically. There are some that I just refuse to cover on the channel, but don't worry about that right now. Okay. Before we get into some resources, let's recap our creation method a little bit right here, okay? We need to remember this doesn't need to be complicated. We're doing quick creation for possible companions before we make full-on character sheets for them in the world that we're in, okay? Because in fact, I think the companions often work better whenever you just start with enough information to make them interesting, and then you let the rest of the details come out naturally through play. Before you even make their character sheet, you're going to learn a little bit about them. You could even review your journal or however you're keeping track of your game, remember what happened, and you'd be like, oh, well, they were good at that one thing, so maybe they'll have this bonus or whatever. It's kind of good to do. And also, it stops you from putting that character in a box. Maybe you could ask some yes or no questions. You're like, you come across a thing and you're like, does this character just have rope handy? Would they be good at this? You could ask those yes or no questions to learn about them as you are playing. So keeping them simple at first can be great. We're going to do our 5 things, right? We're going to give them a name, something they're good at, or a role, something they want, something that makes them difficult, and give them a connection, right? A connection to the world. Or you can give them a flaw and what makes them fun to travel with, let's say. What creates complication? And if you want to get super detailed, you could then write down some questions that you might have about that character and their role in this world. That's it. 5 things and a couple questions. Truthfully, sometimes I only do 3. I do rules of 3, but I know some people want some more, so you could also just do 5. So if I was making a companion quickly, I would write down their name is Jesse. Their role is protector. They want coin. They do not trust magic. And then I would put, is Jesse running from someone? You know, I'd start asking some questions. Why did he agree to join me? Why does he want to leave town? You know, stuff like that. Okay, let's talk about some resources. Some resources to get you started, all right? Some fun little resources to help you make your and manage your companions. Okay, because more oftentimes than not in the Solo RPG Academy videos, I make my own free PDFs that I'm giving out to you guys. I felt like this video didn't really need a whole PDF for me to release to you guys, but there will be a section of it in the Solo RPG playbook, the book that we're going to be releasing later. But for now, I feel like we really need a PDF, especially because maybe it's not always me to create things. Maybe I suggest some fun things from the awesome Solo RPG community and all the people making crap out there in the world, okay? So, the first one that we're going to mention is the Perilous Wilds, okay? Recently, Originally, I did a whole video covering this thing, but it has rules for companions. This is made for World of Darkness, but we're solo role players. We use resources from everywhere, right? This has some really fun rules in it for lead the way. See if you've got highlighted there on page 20. Let's hop over. It's got some fun checks you could actually make before recruiting people to see if they actually want to join you. And it also has fun rules for loyalty, which I think is fun. And it has creating follower sections in here, right? And one thing I think is really fun is if you're hiring someone, it has their quality. Like, what are they actually good at? So instead of rolling that D4, you can come up with their quality right on the spot to see what quality of hireling are they. And I think that that's fun. And you could use this and translate it to make it like their level or whatever it is you're doing in something else, right? But we have loyalty rules in this thing that I think is just very fun. And this works with tags, right? This little section right here in Perilous Wilds, I think is just fantastic. Now, if we're coming up with stuff, we want to roll on some stuff to figure out what the class, the species, whatever it is of our characters, I always recommend Table Fables right here. Table Fables is just a no-brainer. I know a lot of folks use a lot of different kinds of stuff, but this is literally just roll charts. It's literally just roll charts. We've got player class, which again, you can roll on this to see what exactly your companion is good at. We have warrior, paladin, bard, ranger, cleric, etc. Then we have a little bit more about them, right? Are they a shepherd, a servant, a noble, etc. We also have traits in here. So you can go in here and just roll on a couple things, get 3 to 5 things about that character. And again, they don't have to be my suggestions, but I think 3 to 5 important things get your character moving forward. These 2 books right here are fantastic. This right here is the Hired Hands generator. You can get this on itch.io, I think for free, and it's sick. It's got names in here. It's got nicknames, their occupation, like we talked about, motivations, their perks, their flaws, and it's super simple. It's a little 2-pager, all right? It's even got some sample hirelings in here for you and how to roll on it, okay? Hired Hands generator for free. Fantastic. Another thing I want to mention is the Ironsworn series and the way that they handle companions, because they use them in the style of assets. They're on these little cards. This is Sundered Isles, which we're going to get into with our pirate campaign eventually. But they use them in the form of assets. It represents your companion in a clean, simple way that gives them mechanical uses without making them as complicated as a second whole main character, right? A monkey companion, a parrot, a rat, a jungle cat, a dragon companion, a dolphin, a chattering skull. This would be Charles. Yes, it absolutely would. Ironsworn Starforged is the same. You get like a robot companion. You get a card. I've got it with all of my Cassidy Cade stuff, so I can't pull it out and show you, but the way that Ironsworn handles its companions is different, and I think it's cool. And you can also set that card out in front of you so you remember that you have it, and you don't forget, and your companions don't end up T-posing in the corner. Now, there are other cool places that do cool things with companions in solo RPGs. If you have a favorite rule system or even some fun roll charts, whatever you use, leave it down there in the comments below, because these here videos are all about sharing our knowledge so we can just have some more fun in this awesome solo RPG hobby that we have together. Now, I know this was a little bit different of a video, just kind of like ranting about companions for me, but I really think companions are so important, and I have so much fun with companions in literally all of my stories. Every single one of my stories, I have a companion. So I did my best to kind of put together how I handle them and why they make sense and everything else like that. And I hope that my knowledge I shared today helps you at all, okay? If it did, let me know by leaving a like, and make sure to share your fun companion knowledge down there in comments below. Do you have a favorite companion, a story maybe? Share it with us. And also, I think I fixed the Discord link, so everybody, even on iPhones, should be able to join now. And also, merch on the store. Roll for treats, baby. It's on the store. Pick it up if you want it. Thanks everybody so much for watching. I appreciate you. Remember to take a seat on the couch by subscribing, or at least until you find yourselves with a bunch of companions yourselves. Roll on that, weirdos. I have been Turk. Toodaloo.